Hey everybody, welcome to another entry in the Hyrule Compendium, and today we're talking about the original Legend of Zelda, and specifically whether or not it holds up by modern gaming standards.
I think this is a question that it totally depends on the context of who you're talking to. If you are talking to somebody who grew up post Nintendo, original Nintendo, so maybe from the Super Nintendo or 64 was their first games, I don't think this game will hold up to them. I think they will play this game and immediately feel this game is old. This doesn't feel like a modern game, doesn't play like it.
Yeah, just like getting used to the controls and how to fight enemies, that can be a hurdle to overcome. Like, basically your brain is just wired in a different way.
Controls have come a long way in more modern games. Legend of Zelda controls alright, but it's still a little clunky compared to, it's not as perfectly smooth as, say, like A Link Between Worlds or something, which is in the same scope.
There's like people who it's the flip side. Like they only played older NES, Super Nintendo, maybe N64 games, but then once video games got into like 3D and stuff, like, I mean, Jamie in our series, Jamie Plays Zelda, was kind of struggling with like Z targeting, which we had a lot of people comment like, why isn't he Z targeting?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it seems so natural to people. I don't necessarily know. Do you think, like, does that mean like gaming has improved and people are just not used to it being the way it used to be, or is it just different?
It's different. I think standards has changed. I mean, one of the reasons why I also feel maybe it doesn't hold the difficulty. It's a hard game. Even like games like Breath of the Wild that have come out more recently are, I would say, are hard games. That's a hard game, at least early on in the quest before you're super powered up. But I don't think people play Breath of the Wild and get so frustrated and quit or anything like that. Whereas I could totally see somebody picking up Legend of Zelda who hasn't played it before and be like, this is way too hard. I don't want to play this. The style of play has changed. Games have gotten easier as in the last 20 years, I would say. Now, it's more of a pendulum because there are some games that have tried to push it back the other way and now are super difficult.
Yeah.
And even Zelda has come around to that a little bit with hero mode and with Breath of the Wild in particular.
Well, there are like some people who think certain old games are difficult but not like fair. Do you think that's the case in this?
This is very fair difficulty, I think, Legend of Zelda.
Okay. So I would put that more than in a category of holding up.
Yeah, there's not like stupid deaths. Like in a lot of NES games are like that, where you can't do anything about it, or The Legend of Zelda doesn't really have that. It's just the combat is hard. First time you fight some of the more difficult enemies, and even the basic enemies early on will give people trouble. I think you can give somebody nowadays A Link to the Past. It's only a 16-bit, it's only released in 91, 5 years later, but I still think that holds up graphically, the audio holds up, and the gameplay holds up to today's standards.
I kind of like the graphics of the original Legend of Zelda.
Whoa, nice graphics. I'd like to get my hands on that game.
I think they do hold up. Like they're still very, I mean, depending on what you play it on, they're pretty clean. Like I'm never like staring at something like, what is that supposed to be? I can see how if you weren't used to stuff like that, you'd look at it and be like, that doesn't look good. But I think compared to other NES games that aren't on that tier, I think it looks really good, actually.
There's a lot of NES games, I think about it now, that it looks like somebody built it like with Microsoft Paint or something. Pixels all over the place, just disgusting sometimes.
I think there's like a simple and like somewhat consistent design in that game.
There's definitely that. But I do feel you look at the game and it just looks old. You can immediately associate, oh, this game came out a long time ago. I'd say a game like A Link to the Past, if you showed it to somebody right now, like a little kid who'd never seen it before could think this is a mobile game that came out 3 years ago. Like, I don't think it looks like a game that's almost 30 years old.
But I don't necessarily think that means it doesn't hold up, I guess. Like, I still think it's not like hard on the eyes or anything.
I agree with that, yeah.
A never-ending adventure new for your Nintendo Entertainment System.
I Another question I have about how it holds up is like when you just sit down and if you sat down and played it blind for the first time, knowing where to go is a bit of a challenge in that. Do you think that hurts it a little bit, or do you think it's okay in that sense?
It's not as okay nowadays.
There are some things that are just so cryptic in that game.
This is a sign of the times a little bit, because 80s was all about that, the late 80s, early 90s NES era, where part of the game was just figuring out where to go. And sometimes it was just stupid things, like, oh, you got to burn this bush that's 4 to the right, oh, that's where the heart container is. It's like, this was a pre-guide era game, so a lot of it was trial and error and literally bombing every single wall. Nobody's playing that way in 2018. At least I don't think so. Like, I think somebody who picks up Legend of Zelda, like, oh, I want to get all the rupee locations, or I want to find all the heart containers, if they know that they're in the game, then they'll be like, okay, Google, oh, this website Zelda Dungeon has, oh, okay.
It does.
And they see a map with a tree that's burned right on this specific coordinate and be like, oh, okay.
Do you think that disqualifies it from holding up a little bit because someone has to use a guide?
Not necessarily, not completely. Yeah. I don't think using a guide is necessarily a bad thing for a game. It can still be a fun, enjoyable experience, but it's significantly different experience from 30 years ago when the game was new. The style of play of, like, this is your game, you're wandering off trying to find as many secrets as possible, that doesn't exist, I think, anymore in this particular game because of the style of game it is. It's different than, like, in Breath of the Wild when you're looking for secret caves or secret, or even Ocarina with, like, the grottos and such. They're not as cryptic. You'll find them.
And it's a little less essential if you don't find that stuff in Breath of the Wild. Or in this, it's like you want to get the magic sword or something like that.
Significantly more in the second quest, too. Like, sometimes you have to place a bomb on top of a river to blow up the mountain that's beyond the river that you would probably think, oh, I didn't even know I can get there. It doesn't even make sense. My
defense of how the guide thing, like, it still holds up despite that, is that I've been practicing it recently to play at our marathon that we're going to have this year, and it's now become a thing where you have all the information, you're looking at the map and you can see where everything is, and you're planning how you're going to take on the whole thing. So it becomes a different game.
That has a lot to do with the difficulty. It's one of the few games I can think of where you can watch a guide or read a guide. Actually knowing what you have to do and executing it is totally different. Yeah. You really have to advance in your level of play in order to progress through this game. You can't really brute force your way through the game like you can in some future Zelda games. And I wonder if does that hold up by 2018 standards? Do people play, like, I can think of, like, Dark Souls. That's one of the common games that people bring up in terms of you're gonna play it and die over and over and over and over and over.
Those games give you slightly more tools and, like, ways to improve, whereas this, you have a very limited move set. There's only a couple options you have to avoid dying.
Yeah.
Whereas this, you could kind of master a more complicated system. So maybe people feel like that's a little cheaper, like, well, I can only go 4 directions and use a couple items, but that's just a limitation. I don't know if it means it doesn't hold up necessarily.
If I was showing something to a new person, I would not show this game. I don't think it's as symbolic for the series by today's standards as it was then.
I agree with that, but I do feel like this game still holds up. Like, I feel like it stands the test of time a little bit. There are obviously some things like, the soundtrack repeats over and over. We didn't even talk about that. But overall, like, I'm really bad at old games. I'm not really good at any games, really. But, like, I have gotten to a point where I'm playing this game and not really struggling too hard with it, and it's fun. And it didn't take me that many playthroughs, so I think, I feel like you can overcome the difficulty a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not a recommend for your first Zelda.
I'll finish it off by saying I think it holds up significantly better than most NES games, but I still don't think it holds up very well.
Well, there you have it. What do you guys think? Does this game hold up? Does A Link to the Past hold up?
Of course it does.
I want to know what they think though, because we have a varying crowd out there. Maybe some people don't agree.
Some people might have a wrong opinion.
Well, give us a like, subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.